You're listening to the Slow Ride Podcast. Fights, advice, and rumors straight from the source. TheSlowRidePodcast.com and on Twitter at TheSlowRidePod. Enjoy the ride.
Hello and welcome to the 62nd episode of the Slow Ride Podcast. Gentlemen, we are number one. For about 6 hours, we were number one on the iTunes charts, so we'd like to thank our listeners. This is Tim Hayes.
Yeah.
Coming from Gainesville, Florida, for the very last time. I have another group ride to ruin.
Oh, good. This is Matt from Minneapolis. What place are we now, Tim?
We are in 145th place, so the algorithm is clearly corrected itself on the amateur charts.
How does that work? Because we didn't DNF our last podcast. We finished in the group, I thought.
That's where we're normally trying to go. And our last host, Spencer Howe, all the way up in Boston, Massachusetts. How you doing, Spencer?
Doing pretty well, thanks, buddy. Yeah.
And Spencer has taken on the production quality. So any issues with volume, all of that, just blame Spencer. Since I'm moving, it's a little...
I'm going to just go ahead and mute you right now, and we should hit that number one spot again pretty quick.
I'm in boxes. I'm in a room of boxes, and if you hear my dog in the background, it's because he's starting to freak out because he knows the move is coming. But that isn't why people listen to our show. People listen to our show for accurate news on cycling gossip, and any kind of advice that they could want. So you can always email us at theslowridepodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet us at theslowridepod. And so right away, let's get we did get a pretty cool tweet from Brad Walker. He said, "Hey, listen to the Slow Ride Pod on the way to the group ride today," and then proceeded not to get dropped. Coincidence? Yeah,
No.
That is clearly a coincidence, Brad. Brad, we'd like to thank you for listening to the podcast, but it wasn't because you listened to us so you didn't get dropped.
You sure?
I don't know. I think there's a
lot of
strong
helpful tips.
possibility, you know. Let's look at the
It
next
happens
one.
once.
Is there,
All right,
do we have
well-
any other
We should
tweets?
Try again.
Yeah, we had a couple other ones. We did retweet probably the coolest podium bike that I have ever seen, coming from Gulfport, Mississippi, the winner of the beginners race on a fendered out with racks Surly Pacer, including down tube shifters, brought his bike up to the podium. And Michael Bonegamer, or at Land Softly, said, "Hey, for context, this was the beginners race. Surly beat an Aero Carbon Giant in a 2-up sprint. Crowd pleaser for sure."
It is
You know,
a crowd pleaser. I
And
like
little
that.
guy, when we saw that come across the Twitter feed, I was like, oh, that is totally getting retweeted because we approve, because that's pretty much little guy style right there.
I know how you're afraid of down tube shifters, Timmy. So
Was this
exciting.
what was this race? It seems like it could have been a gravel grinder.
Perhaps. That's why he had the fenders on. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find out more. It was in Mississippi, so it is a little bit backwards on how they do their racing, but who knows. Ryan
Vibes the highest
Gabriel,
category.
at Ryan Gabriel, said, "Hey, a little off the back and just getting around to this week's Slow Ride Pod, North Star Valley Grand Prix Festival, Tour de France. I love this podcast, damn it." Well, thanks, Ryan. We appreciate your listening. Thanks for tweeting at us. It's so nice of you.
This is a great podcasting, Tim. I'm gonna go ahead and
Isn't
cut
it?
you off though. Let's just get into bike racing, okay?
Okay, yeah. Don't
So
care.
we're podcasting here on the 23rd of June. It's a Tuesday. Everybody knows all the major news drops the week before the tour, and this year is no different. 2015, we got smacked across the face today with the Dutch doping report, and no series of non-surprises there, and a couple of surprises. So, did you guys read
Yes.
that reports on that? And I know you didn't read the
I
whole
read-
document.
I read all 96 pages of it. I
Yeah.
actually downloaded it, but I haven't read it yet.
I read the.
I was
clip notes.
impressed with that part in the first part where it said the sky is also blue. That was weird. Like, Reese is doper and the sky is blue. Revelations.
Those are revelations.
Yeah, I read some of it. What do you guys think about it? Any surprises?
I
got two.
I've got a couple surprises.
One is two as well.
It's very nice that it's after the statute of limitations.
That's convenient.
Well,
yeah.
Very
it's convenient. The same way
Carlos Sastre, 2008
Yeah.
Tour de France winner, not guilty.
Well,
Hardly
yeah.
any mention of Carlos Sastre.
But then he doesn't remember that conversation, which is
Yeah.
weird. I want to believe Carlos.
How
And I
convenient.
really like the idea of Reese just being like, you could use a bag or two if you want. And
What's
Sastre just being
weird-
like, screw this shit, I'm leaving.
Yeah, what's weird is Reese is like, dude, he got so pissed off, and that's why he left the team. And Carlos is like, I don't remember that. Like, dude, he's giving you the out, and you're not even taking
Yeah.
it. Like,
Maybe I think Carlos maybe doesn't want to talk shit because he's never talked shit. Like he's been on a lot of weird teams where tons of guys have gone down, and he's had plenty of chance to throw people under the bus and be like the clean guy. And he's always just like, I do my thing. I don't know what other people are doing. I don't care. And I don't remember my other point. That's my own point.
No, I think that's a good point. So Carlos continues to kind of skirt above the law.
well, I was
because
going to
we
say
don't know
fly under
where
the
he
radar,
was.
but I guess either way
Yeah,
it
well,
works.
Yeah. And then the
Over
other
the
one,
radar, under the radar.
I think clearly at this point we have to make mention of Jens Voigt. Jens Voigt is
People's hero.
Hero to many. He's
Shut
a great
up,
cyclist,
Legs.
but he's he's always kind of skirted this fine line as well on if he doped or didn't. He always claims he kind of like didn't.
He
Maybe.
claims the
It
past
just
is the
kinda-
past, and he doesn't want to talk about it. That's what he's always claimed.
Like he just wants to talk about geocaching, and at some point,
Who doesn't?
all chickens come home to roost, and I think that this is what we're starting to see with this report and Jens.
I thought
You know what I really like?
What?
The reason that Reese supposedly could talk to Sastre about the blood doping, and he Reese could say like, oh, I know Discovery's doing it, so we can do it and get away with it, is that Basso supposedly had tipped him off to it. And Basso is banned at this point. So that means even though Basso had left the team and then gotten fired from Discovery and taken his ban, he was still buddies enough with Reese to call Reese and be like, hey, dude, just so you know, a little blood doping going on over there. You can get away with it. They're getting away with it. They got a good system. Like,
This is how it works.
Basso's either like really loyal to Reese or like dirty or like sold that for some promise of a future job or something weird. Like, that's some weird shit.
In that story about how he's being banned, or he was banned at the time, it reminds me of the when Tyler Hamilton was serving his suspension. And remember, they found him in the Operation Puerto files, and they never made it very clear that if it was his blood bags from before him getting doped, or if he was actually doping when he was under suspension and preparing himself for the return.
Just to get ready.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of interesting. And of course, he was on CSC too. And I don't think we can be really shocked that Bjarne Reese, a.k.a. Mr. 60%, was helping orchestrate a major doping scandal that maybe not to the level of the Postal, but still a very clear...
I bet it was to that level. I mean, I feel like...
They didn't win, though. They won 2008, sorry.
Yeah, and they won some Chiros. They won plenty. I mean, Postal and CSC were like they were in the home run derby contest of of this whole thing, and they were the McGuire and Canseco's of their time, but pretty much the same era.
That means CSC's the Sosa.
The Sosa. Wait, no, Sosa's not.
Sosa.
No, McGuire and Canseco are not the same time as Sammy Sosa. You got to be thinking of like Dennis Eckersley. You got to go back to the Bash Brothers of maybe 1990.
Well, I'm thinking
Dave
McGuire
Stewart.
Sosa.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
So anything else that stuck out to you guys? You guys both said two things.
Well, what I thought was funny, I popped open Cycling News and I saw that article, and then right below it, I thought very ironically was the article saying Schleck was dropping out of the tour team.
I know, that is awesome.
And I said,
surprise, surprise, knee injury.
That is some interesting timing right there. Wasn't he on CSC for a long time?
I have that added to our show notes, guys. That when I was at the Tour de France preview, where I was just going to like, hey, little guy, are you surprised that Schleck's out of the tour?
Oh, or Schlecks. I used to love them so much. God, man, I hope that's just a terrible coincidence. And he was like tweeting his thing about his knee, and then he like flipped over to cycling news and was like, "Oh no,
Son of a! Oh God, this is
everyone's
terrible."
gonna draw the connection."
How many years in a row now has this been a doping controversy brought within the first before a week or two before the tour? Because Puerto was right before,
year.
and it's like, I mean, this is almost it's definitely tradition, but I think it's almost like a yearly tradition at this point.
it
I
is.
feel like
It
there's
is.
always something, even if it's just really small or it's just because this is obviously a big report. But if nothing else, somebody would have been like Bo Hamburger doped, and you'd be like, "Oh, wow!"
Well, they
cow.
figured out in 1998 that if they did it in the middle of the tour, it kind of screwed everything up. So after that, they moved to the week before.
So, do we have any?
It builds the tension.
So, do we want to take any guesses of remaining controversies that could be revealed before the Tour de France?
Oh, I mean,
would think
because we're what,
involving Contador.
Are we 2 weeks out?
And
I think the shoe-in is an Astana blow up.
Astana,
Yeah.
This Astana one of late is about the female racer for Astana who races
That's
for the
messed
Ukraine,
up.
and then they're trying to force her to take Astana citizenship, and she said no, and she's been banned before. Like that's a weird story.
That was a really weird one. Yeah, they dropped her, and they said, like you said, weird.
Anyway,
I don't know.
There's definitely an Astana story coming, and I can't wait. We'll be
I
on
think
the
there's a
front lines.
Contador story coming, man. I'm worried we're
Really?
not going to get a chance to see the double attempted because you can't have this much CSC stuff come out.
I think the double, man. Speaking of the double, I think the double's in the bag, you guys.
No.
it's not in the bag.
Oh.
It's
You
not.
see, he came back from
Just
the
'cause he
Giro
beat
in his first
Quintana?
race he did. He wins. Granted, it's a 4-day stage race.
Quintana was
wins.
there with him in the mountains.
Finished second.
And it's only I know, but he's playing the cards close to the vest. Quintana's looking good. Lost the one stage by 5 seconds on the descent.
Nibbles is at that secret altitude training camp right now, getting crazy fast.
Little guy,
You know
he's
he is.
on Astana, so he may not even be in the tour.
No,
true.
he's gonna be fine. Don't worry. Vino's paid off all the right people.
Guys, if this keeps up, it should be noted that Trek Factory Racing announced their team, and obviously got Cancellara. But once again, Aymar Zubeldia, he's probably got a top 8 Tour de France in him.
Yeah, he could be the doping story that comes up.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd be interested in knowing
Slow and
how
steady
many
wins the race.
and how many top 10s in the Tour de France Zubeldia has, and if that is close to like a record, because he has a lot.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably
we
not as
could
many
probably
as
figure that
Sastre.
out in like 5 minutes of Salutino. I bet Sastra's got more. Sastre was like consistently top 10 every time he got in the Grand Tour, probably until
And-
that last
and of
last
course,
Volta, where he ended up working for my boy Kobo.
So
you're flashing
speaking
the
of
fan.
Kobo, Kobo wins a Grand Tour, and he's still not on a Pro Tour team. Little guy, why is
He
that?
was on a Pro Tour team at the year after. He was on your terrible
Fatoon.
Movistar
Wasn't he on the
boys. He
Fatoon
probably got
team?
depressed again. He was
So-
on the Fatoon team, then he was on the Geeks Gawks team or whatever, then he was on Movistar, and now he's probably at home.
It's probably waiting tables.
Hey, little guy, just a quick follow-up to last week's episode where we talked about fan of the podcast TJ Van Garderen and your quest to challenge him in an arm wrestling competition. Were you able to watch the Sylvester Stallone Classic over the top and prepare your training for that showdown at the Richmond World Championships in September?
I have not yet had a chance to procure that movie, but I think I still got time.
Okay. Have you been doing curls? Like, are you gonna be
lot
a
of curls.
wrist kind of guy, or are you gonna straight power?
I don't know. I'm gonna wait till I see the movie.
Okay.
I've got a VHS copy coming in the mail, so
And-
that'll be a little bit. I got to rewind it when I get it.
And as Spencer mentioned earlier, guys, that this is obviously big Tour de France Tuesday news session, but it's also the last Tuesday night. It's the last Tuesday night World Championship Crit Series, and little guy, you're actually going to be going to race this. This is why we're recording early tonight.
Yep.
Are you going to be able to make it to the start in time?
I think so. I think so. That's all I know is I think so.
Do you need any advice? Do you want any tips from us on how to perform in tonight's Crit finale?
No, I've seen both of you race crits, and I'm not a great crit racer, and I'm not on any great form. I haven't found a rich vein of form yet this year. I've been poking around for it. But I don't need any advice from you guys. I know that
Well,
much.
but okay, well, thanks, and we'll get to your past racing this past weekend at the North Star Valley Grand Prix Festival, but we'll get to that in a second.
It's a mouthful that is not. No one can say it.
So should we just finish up Tour de France news before we get into Nature Valley?
Yeah. So
let's talk.
Tim, you mentioned the Trek Factory Racing team roster announcement, but I think the big news today was the MTN Quebec team announcement.
Yeah,
because that's pretty rad.
There's a lot of really rad things on there.
They left off some surprising people, and they took some surprising people, and I think it's going to be. I'm actually pretty excited to see how they do in the tour.
I am too. I know that you got the South African road champion who's 23. They're looking pretty strong. I am really excited for this team because they seem like a stage hunting team, and they have a good mission. It seems that they're really trying to let new people race. And then you got Tyler Farrar. What could possibly go wrong? This is great. I'm really excited. Quickly becoming
Boston Hogan. He's on the comeback trail.
Quickly becoming me personally my second favorite team after AG2R. I'm definitely going to be pulling for MTN Quebec. How about you guys?
I think so. I think Steve Cummings he's been racing really well this year. He's definitely a long shot for poaching a stage win at some point out there. Mm-hmm. Kind of a dark horse when he gets in a move. I can see some good stuff happening.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people are going to ask why I'm not even trying to pronounce the racers' names, but it's just I don't want to butcher.
I think they know why.
Yeah.
I think if
I
they
don't think they're going to ask.
I think they know.
Yeah.
I can't say Serge Pauls, and they do have two brothers on the team, which I really like. Jacques Janse van Rensburg, and then Reinhard Janse van Rensburg. Two brothers. And just a quick shout out, guys, on one of the tweets we got from Matt Watts. He said, "Hey, so glad the Super Rookie was back today. I missed the horrible pronunciation and cycling facts applied in key interruptions." You're welcome, Matt. That was for you. And so, guys, pretty exciting MTN Quebec team. We also got the Bora Argonne team announced today. No one really
rides
matters.
For them anymore.
Paul Voss. They were last year. They were the NetApp Endura team. Now it's Paul Voss. Seems to be.
They lost their GC rider, and now they're.
Well, their GC rider is on the long list for Sky. I don't know if you saw that news today, where Sky kind of accidentally released their long list.
No, I didn't.
And they kept some key people off, and then they all of a sudden deleted it.
Once every year, one team accidentally releases its long list a little early, and I can't imagine that these are not actual psychological warfare between the team. To get guys motivated to try a little harder. To give them a little nudge.
They did blame it on the third party.
Yeah. Thomas is skipping the national championships, and I think that's always a sign that you're going to make the tour team on Skies if you sit around and go to an altitude training camp and don't race.
The big name that was missing was Bernard Eisel. But I will say Leopold Koenig is on that list with Chris Froome, so Froome is going to have a top lieutenant in the mountains with him, so that will also be exciting.
Does he have a good Aussie mate?
Richie Port will be there to sacrifice everything. Danny Pate was also listed on the long list. If you guys all remember Danny Pate, cool story there.
He had a top 5 result in the time trial at Tour Swiss or something the other day. I hadn't seen Danny Pate's name on the top of a sheet in a long time, and then there he was. So good result. Still racing well.
Yeah, and I think
he's always a worker. He's always sacrificing himself. It was nice to see.
Now this is
an American that doesn't get the press.
This is a pretty cool weekend because this weekend is all of the national championships, right?
Yeah. What are you guys gonna watch? I'm gonna watch Slovakia if I can.
I just looked to see how the jerseys
for that feed.
I'm just interested in seeing what the jersey outcomes are because it is pretty cool to see these national champions race and then they get picked up for the tour. I can only hope that Dan Craven is racing this national championship weekend so we can maybe see him in the tour and bring even more African-based riders into the Tour de France. That'd be pretty awesome.
Has Eurocar announced a long list, a short list, the long list?
Yeah, I think the long list.
Tommy V?
The long list is Tommy Vogler, and that's it.
It says Tommy Vogler 9 times, and then they just cross him out and put in new people.
Guys, I was surprised.
Seal Gaultier.
I was surprised the other day. I saw that he was something like 36 years old or something. Thomas Vogler. It was something that I saw the age, and I was like, really?
Oh yeah,
You always think
so-
of little Tommy Vogler, and then you realize he's older than you.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, isn't it?
How did that happen?
All right, so the big one, Belgian Road Championships. Tom Boonen for the win.
Yep.
All right.
I don't know what the course is like.
Boonen.
What's it like? Is it bumpy?
I don't know. I don't care.
Stein de Boulder.
Okay.
He's defending the jersey.
Boonen.
He's going to be motivated. He's in the tour team. He's motivated, and he's Stein de Boulder.
All right, a couple rapid fire questions for you guys. Yes or no? Will Nibali be racing in the Tour de France, little guy?
Yes.
Spencer.
Yes. By the
Contador.
skin of his teeth.
Will Contador be
No.
racing in the Tour de France?
No.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay. I think both will be racing in the Tour de France. Spencer, who is going to win the Tour de France right now?
Contador. Without
Little guy?
doubt.
Jean-Christophe Bernard.
Whoa.
Hope springs eternal, my
Whoa.
friend.
Hope springs eternal. All right, well, it is going to be Nairo Quintana for the victory. Who will win the team classification in the Tour right now? Who do you think is the strongest team going into the Tour? I think it's AG2R.
Have they? Speaking of them, have they their long list?
They have a long
Pozovio's
list.
in good shape.
Yeah, he's
Are
on
they
it.
going to bring?
He's
are
on
they
the
going to
long
bring
list.
the 4 GC threat? Are they going to bring our friend the gummy bear?
That is still questionable. I think he was on the long list, but I think AG2R is definitely the strength for the team
So
competition.
they're going to bring 3 GC riders
Posavivo.
with a credible Posavivo, Bernard, and Bardet.
Yeah, and then possibly the gummy bear.
Possibly the gummy bear, who, if he's skinny, is a GC rider.
Little guy, who's going to
That's
win the
insane.
team competition?
I guess AG2R now.
Spencer?
I was going to say Movistar, but
It's going to be Astana.
Astana? Oh, wow. I would say
how is that
maybe...
possible? Fuslang?
Because they're gonna have places 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 after Alberto Contador.
All right, and then now that we've figured out, you've heard it here first, and we're just going to move this show right along. Real quick, guys, the big news coming out of the UCI showdown with the ASO. We don't need to get into the actual politics here, but the ASO is threatening.
No idea what's going on.
ASO is threatening
Yeah.
removing the races from the calendar. Does that matter?
No.
No, I agree.
I think it matters. I think if they do, it matters because it definitely challenges the
then it would
ability of the
matter.
UCI to like function as the actual governing body rather than having a private company being the governing body. I think it matters. Is it boring and annoying to hear about? Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that is the investigative journalism our listeners have come to expect. So let's move right on to the next step, and maybe we'll talk about ASO versus UCI later.
Hi, I'm Jake Wells. Listen to Slow Ride Podcast.
Guys, Nature Valley Grand Prix, or now known as the North Star Memorial Bicycle Festival.
Just can't do it right.
What's going on here? Little guy, you're there. I'm just going to report from what I saw is that this race has lost all meaning. There's no women's race, which was always the highlight of this event in my eyes because it was always almost given equal credence. The prize list wasn't the same, but at least they always, got to have the women racing only with the pro men on some of those crit courses.
Yeah.
And
well, they had me this year. They had me out there this year, so the fans were pretty much the same.
I'm a little.
On the side of the road.
I got to be honest. Looking at those teams, you only had Jelly Belly and Optum Health from the big wigs.
Is Jelly Belly a big wig team, really, though?
But when they're your second team,
They are.
guys,
I mean,
like United Healthcare,
US.
United Healthcare, headquartered in Minneapolis and St. Paul, couldn't even send their crit squad. It is.
They couldn't even send
That
their
is-
B crit squad,
Yeah,
which also
like-
would have won this race.
They couldn't bring the
No.
United Healthcare 706 team, which is based out of Georgia. Like it's just, it's sad that this race at one time was. I mean, guys, this is the race that we
Okay.
cut our teeth on.
So can we? I know we discussed the cancellation of the women's race a bunch on a past episode here, but it struck me, and I don't think we made the point on that episode that the week before was the Philly International Classic,
Yep.
which was a women's World Cup race, and all of the best women racers in the world were in the U.S. and not that far, a 2-hour, 3-hour plane ride away from Minnesota, and none of them showed up for this race. What does that say?
Well, where were they? Well, they're hanging out at the Tour of America's Dairyland, guys, which started on the 18th, and it's sad. Like, I'm not saying all of the World Cup women's teams went from Philly to Wisconsin, but it says something when the Tour of America's Dairyland has a field size of 50 strong women, and they, guys, the national racing calendar for women is over now. There's no more.
Why do they overlap this year? Do you guys know?
It's because
they've never overlapped in the past.
I think it's because Tour of America's Dairyland.
Hurt.
I think Toad has realized that the Nature Valley Grand Prix was on the way out, and they pounced on it.
It's long on the way out. I mean, you can look at the amateur fields, and even the amateur women's field at the Tour of Dairyland races are 50 people strong. Like, that's huge. And the fact that Nature Valley can't draw anybody. And
I don't buy the sponsor thing. I think a lot of it has to do with, when I say the sponsor thing, I mean the lack of a title sponsor, and it was kind of going this and that. Nature Valley Grand Prix does great things, right? They donate a lot of money to the Children's Hospital and various charities, and that should not be taken back. So I applaud them on that. However, to be a national racing calendar event and to only be able to draw Optum and Jelly Belly, and then the third team was KHS Maxis. Another quality team, but they didn't even get Smart Stop. They didn't get Astellas. They didn't get United Healthcare. There's some great teams out there. And what do you think it is, little guy?
I have no idea. I think it's money.
Money?
I think it's what you don't think it is. I think it's the fact that they don't have a title sponsor where they can have the money to draw the teams.
I'll tell you what part of it is that it's the biggest NRC calendar race. But nobody cares about the NRC calendar at all, and there's no reason to care about it. There's no extra prize purse for it.
Yeah.
There's nothing. You don't get anything really for winning the NRC. Once they broke the crits, all the big crits, Athens Twilight, all that are part of the NCC now, which is different. And the road racers are going for Tour of California in these bigger races. And the crit guys are going for those crit series races, and this NRC, whoever's left on that, is kind of sitting on the pot. They got nowhere to go, and so Nature Valley kind of didn't develop into either a world-class stage race or a week-long crit series like Toad did.
So it's kind of in this purgatory.
It is. Yeah.
And obviously it's easy for us as armchair, and we know, Spencer, you've ridden on the back of one of the motorcycles given time splits. I did radio tour. This event has been going on for a while, and it's an immense amount of work. They have a great volunteer staff.
Background stuff, you and I have sat down with Dave Laporte, the director of this race, and had conversations over coffee about the race with him.
And
we're not totally talking out of our ass, but we're also talking out of our ass. We haven't done that for a few years. So
why don't you guys call him up, get him on the show?
Well, they work really hard.
I'm sure he would.
They worked really hard on what they're doing, but it's I think if the race is going to succeed, they may have to think outside the box and just get rid of the purgatory level and no longer perhaps be a stage race.
They need to
Why
change
not go
direction.
the route? Why not go out and just do maybe a 3 crit series or a 5 race individual series? Get rid of the road races, perhaps. Because I think that do a speed week type thing. Yep. You could add in a couple of the crits in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, make it more of a Tour of America's Dairyland, but in Minnesota. You can still get the Stillwater crit, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and a couple of others. Because at this level, it's not after looking at this field this year, it's just sad.
No.
Well, I can tell you, I know we talked about the field, but I think it made for better racing this year that the field was a little bit more varied, that there were a couple bigger teams and a bunch of smaller teams, I think, that were a little hungrier to go out on the attack and make it interesting. A break won on Wednesday, which was crazy. In the downtown crit, seeing a break, stick it, and hold it to the line.
And we got to see
awesome.
We got to see almost a local team, Donkey Label Racing. With some local guys on there holding their own, and hold on to that GC jersey all the way into Saturday's road race.
Yep.
And then Tom Zerbel put on a show.
And the biggest positive, to start spinning the Nature Valley week into some positive light here, because we didn't hate the whole thing. Obviously, was the whole understory of Carmen Small. Like, that was amazing. It was really rad that Laporte signed off on that and was full gas on it. Like, he was behind it, and the race seemed behind it, and the crowds were behind it, and they were doing crowd preems for her and stuff. Like,
that was my favorite thing. That was my favorite.
To say. It was pretty constant.
The Friday night crit when it's the crowd preem for first place woman across the line.
Yeah,
that was exciting. Again, Spencer, you hit it right on the head, nail right on the head. That we love that of it, and maybe that's why we take it kind of personal, and it's sad looking from afar that no one seems to really care.
That's true. But do you think this? She succeeded. She finished the race. She made it to Stillwater. She raced that day, the final day. Do you think that's going to encourage more women to do it, or do you think it's going to encourage more promoters to not put themselves in that situation?
I don't know if it'll do either. I think it was just sort of its own little in between one-off. I think a lot of other women would look at that and be like, "Whew, that looked like a bunch of suck to be just like a novelty in the middle of the race." I don't know. It felt like a weird position for her to be in. I don't know if it was exactly fun or not.
Yeah, I read an interview with her about it where she said the road race in Menominee she was about 5 miles an hour faster than the women's race was last year, and she was just kind of hanging in there. And she finished off the back in a group there, but was in that main peloton for a long time. It makes me wonder if she's like, why don't I just go faster? Like, maybe she knows now that she can go faster than she thought she could. Like, that there's no psychological governor on that motor anymore, you know what I mean? And she might be might be the next one to dominate.
Well, that kind of that reminds me of Spencer. Remember Katie Compton when she was racing, when she was doing the Paralympic blind tandem piloting, and she wasn't allowed to race her category in USA Cycling, so except at national championship events. So she used to race in the category 3 men, and then so she'd always start in the back of her first 4 or 5 national cross championships. She'd start in the very back because she didn't have any UCI points, but she was used to racing category 3 men for a longer duration of time. Kind of similar is what you're getting at with Carmen Small now, who can just go to the women's races and show how much of a beast she is. I mean, that was a hell of a performance she put together. I would have been dropped personally in 5 minutes. And I also want to say that I didn't see any public disparaging comments of her performance versus men. I didn't see anything like, hey, you got girled by Carmen Small in the time. And that was actually very refreshing to me. I was very excited to see that. I was like, oh, maybe society has not become a total dink about this.
A glimmer of hope.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like everyone at the race, everyone watching the race, and from what I could tell, just being there in the race, nobody had any ill feelings toward her being there in that position. But.
All right, so little guy, before you go here to the crit and do us proud with a strong 16th place finish, we got 2 things for you. First off, do you have any updates on your status for the Cross Minnesota record? We haven't touched on this in a while, but when we had fan of the podcast and guest extraordinaire Matt Roy, Matt told us about Brevet Racing and all about
cross state records
challenging you. Are you gonna? How's it going?
I actually thought about it in the last week about riding across the state, though I think I have no desire to ride across the state with a car following behind me at 15 miles an hour, recording my every move.
You think you can average 15 miles an hour?
So we're going to be going 16 miles an hour.
Well, see, you're going to run me over. But yeah, I don't know, man. That just sounds terrible. Though I do want to ride across the state. I want to do that. I just want to do it.
The thing is, little guy, is that
myself.
Nobody in Minnesota has done it yet, so you don't have to go fast. You just have to do it and get your name in the record book. So how's the training going?
Here's what I don't want to do.
Have you planned your route?
No. I just don't want to ride with a car behind me.
Hey, little guy, let's think of your support staff.
Thing on earth.
Let's think
turn the lights off. You won't even know we're there.
Here's your support staff, little guy. What you've got the official. We don't know the official. Maybe Matt Roy can get his official license.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's probably in the books. For mechanic, you have me. And then
Trouble.
and you have Spencer as your logistics. He's really good at directions.
That's true.
And I think that for, positivity, you have both of us. We can get a megaphone. We can be your Sayez, and we could just sit there and just Venga, all the way across from Bemidji to Albert Lee.
Mm-hmm.
That could be the
All
cross
right,
Minnesota
well-
record because no one's done it.
Let's just you guys book those plane tickets for the end of August or something, and let's.
We're gonna need a bush
let's get
plane.
this going.
Yeah. Do you prefer that one little guy, or do you prefer like Stillwater to Marshall, Minnesota, or something?
Yeah, you want to do a west to east?
No, my plan in my fictional world is I was just gonna go up to the Boundary Waters and then just somewhere from up there just get out of the car and turn around and ride south.
Yeah,
All right.
well. All right, let's get to the next topic, little guy. As you were out there training, I'm sure it was out on the Greenway, putting in the miles.
Yep. I was on the Greenway Sunday night, riding home from my grandparents' house. I'm riding a cruiser with a basket on it. And a couple months ago, I got hit on what I said was the only turn on the Greenway, and I'd forgotten that there's one other turn on the Greenway. This one is west of Minneapolis, just into St. Louis Park. There's a little chicane. Maybe you guys remember it, where
the train tracks are.
Little to the right, to the left, and you go over the train tracks. So
Yep.
the tracks are now on the opposite side of you. I was coming up to that, and a drunk guy on a mountain bike was coming up from the other direction, and he plowed right into me, midway in that corner, so that I was as far over as I could be. He hit me, and I fell onto the train tracks.
Ugh.
Was a train coming?
No, there's no train coming.
Was the
thankfully.
level crossing arms down? Were you disqualified?
There are no level crossing arms there.
Oh,
Okay, first question.
but
Did
yeah.
you get hurt?
I did get hurt. My hand is bruised. My wrist is swollen. I've got a cut. You guys can see the cut on my hand.
So
The
That
little
looks like it
whatever
really
the
hurt,
pad, the
How-
pad on behind your thumb is all bruised. And yeah, my shoulder, my hip, my
Oh.
hamstring. I got a nice bruise on my leg. Took me down.
So he takes you down.
painful
Did you stand
crash.
up? What did you say?
I swore at him, so we swore back and forth. So the best part is he hit me, and he asked me if I was okay. And I said, no, I'm not, I'm not okay. You just hit me. I'm on the train tracks. I'm picking myself up. And he kept asking, are you okay? And I was like, I'm not okay. And then Caitlin was like, he says he's not okay.
Oh, Caitlin was
And then, so the guy is yelling at me, and I start yelling at him, and I'm like, well, what the fuck are you doing? What, you hit me? And he's like, you hit me. And I was like, well, you ran into me on my side of the path. So I kind of think it's your fault, considering I'm all the way to the right, and you hit me. But he was drunk, so he thought it was my fault. I was way over there. But the best part then is, as me and him are yelling and I'm picking up my bike stuff, Caitlin picks up his iPhone that's laying on the ground behind him and just whips it over her shoulder off into the woods. He did not see where that iPhone went. And so we got up to leave, and I was
Well
and
done,
I
news
yelled at
desk.
him for being a drunk asshole. And then he yelled as we were riding away. He said, "You owe me $700, you bitch."
So, Spencer.
And that was
checks
it.
in the mail.
So
We rode home.
Spencer, this is probably the sixth or seventh story we've had from Little Guy on the Greenway. We've had some crashes. We've had some
And only
yelling
2
incidents.
crashes.
We've had some racing incidents. We've had a broken down car. I'm starting to wonder, the theme here is that Little Guy is on the Greenway. Do you think that this is a universal experience on the Greenway, or is it just kind of Little Guy attracts the worst of the Greenway?
Yeah, see, I've ridden the Greenway quite a bit. Now, I haven't been there recently, but I've not had many experiences like this.
Yeah, neither can I. I haven't had Little Guy. We're gonna start needing some third-party validation on this, and Caitlin validates this story, I'm sure, with throwing the phone. But
I can. Yeah, I got validation on this one. I didn't even tell you guys a couple weeks ago that there was a guy who passed me a million miles an hour at one of the stops where you cross James or something. Just flew by and almost got hit by a car. And then he sat up and he coasted. And then when I got almost up to him again, fucking killing it. I'd catch back up to him. I kid you not, the helmet was on backwards. You don't see that very often. You don't get the helmet on backwards much, but it's such a beautiful sight.
Intervals.
I got one of those the other day. See, now I've been riding to work. We don't have a greenway, but we have the Southwest Corridor, which is very similar to the greenway in many respects. And I did see my very first helmet on backwards the other day in real life. I've seen photos, and you always kind of wonder, are they staged? And it was amazing.
So helmet on backwards. All right, I think I shared last week. I don't know if it made it through post, but I was on the local trail and I saw the bibs straps over the jersey.
Yeah.
So
and that's nice.
And I had never seen one of those. So pair the backwards helmet and the bib straps over. Now, this begs the question, guys, that these are obvious beginners. So as individuals, is it our responsibility as, kind of normal riders, the everyday riders, to gently say something to these folks? Like, hey, sir, I know you're busy putting out the watts and doing your intervals right here, but your helmet's actually on backwards. And my question is, how do you tactfully say that to someone? Like, you go up next to them and you're like, oh, I know you're out of breath right now, but your helmet, you got to fix it.
I think it's the opposite. I think it's our responsibility to not tell them their helmet's on backwards, because that is bringing joy to all. Like, think about it.
Okay.
99% of the people on the greenway know how to put their helmet on, and that 1% of people that have their helmet on backwards is bringing joy to all the other people who for the most part in their lives, they don't have very many people. Maybe they only know one or two other people that bike. They go home, they say, oh, I saw a guy with his helmet on backwards, and their friends are like, yeah, whatever. I mean, who cares? This brings joy and camaraderie to everyone in the greenway. You can be like, "Do you see that guy? Yeah, that was great. That guy was such an idiot."
So the same thing with the bib?
You pass strangers and you both give each other a knowing nod. Like,
that dude's
okay.
See that? Yeah. I saw that too.
It's kind of like when you see an ex-girlfriend and then her, another ex-boyfriend in the bar, and you're just like, "Hey, what's yeah?"
Yep.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of awkward. See you later. All right, I kind of like it.
Moment, though.
All right, and so, guys, that was a pretty. I know, little guy, you really got to get going here, but real quick, little guy, how into this new Specialized bicycle that's taken over the internet, saying it can save you over 2 minutes for a 40K?
Earlier, I heard 5.
It's 5. It's 5 if you buy. It's 5 if you buy all of the other stuff: the skin suit, the helmet, the whatever doodads. What do you think of the front fairing? Is that going to be allowed in the tour? Or are they going to...
Because they integrated the brake into the little fairing, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how they're trying to get around it.
Yeah, and they're saying it's going to be... The 3x1 is what they're working with.
They're going to have to make some sort of justification that the brake needs that structurally, and somehow that brake is better than another brake. It seems like they're going to run afoul of the UCI on this one.
I think there's no way the UCI tells Specialized that they can't use it. I think that there's too much money involved in this. And once again, it's another Specialized bicycle marketing coup.
We all know.
Like, they want the UCI to say, your bike is too fast and too cool. Yeah. And then some guys are like, yeah, their bike's too fast and too cool.
Pretty much no way they can lose. Yeah.
They don't have to build this bike
anymore. Are we going to see more of this? So if it's allowed by the UCI, we're going to obviously be seeing more of this.
I think we all know that what's going to happen is somebody's going to crash that bike and it's going to rip in half.
But it's not any different than any normal
bike.
No,
that did not rip in half, Spencer. It was on the roof of a car and then the rear view mirror. That we saw this last year, and it was handled so wonderfully.
Oh, God. That was so much... I forgot I dumbed
I will say that Specialized, once again, gets a coup on this. Congratulations on their marketing department. The bike looks crazy. It's strange, especially with the bar stem combo. It reminds me of some of the track bikes that you see from... the look track bike stem, but
like the mid-90s,
yeah, that fairing on the front wheel is a little goofy. Look, you okay?
Yeah,
you're shaking it out.
My arms are sore, man. I got ran into. I'm crampy.
Yeah, and you also got a bike race in about 3 minutes that you got to go get ready for.
Shaking it out.
So,
doing
all right, and
we got to start doing a video podcast.
So, guys,
I know you guys are like mesmerized. I'm just shaking my arm.
We got to know what we have to put up with every week.
It felt crampy.
And with that, guys,
I look like with this shirt and my hair like this. I look terrible.
You look like $1 million, little guy, and we're definitely going to need to do a video podcast for all of our fans who have once again helped us get to #1 on the amateur charts. Soon we'll upgrade.
What are we going to upgrade? When are we gonna upgrade?
I don't know when we're going to upgrade, but we're working on it. And the only way we can
put it-
stay is if we get reviews and we get you to tell your friends. So continue to
See, I
tweet
thought-
about us and subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher. That's what helps us.
I thought the only way to upgrade was you buy Matt Anderson a 6-pack.
That's how it works in Minnesota.
That's how it works for Minnesota USA Cycling. But guys, the key here is...
That's a pro tip for all the upcoming racers in Minnesota.
It's not anymore. He's not in charge of it
Well,
anymore.
Oh, that's
pro
good.
tip.
Because that's how you upgrade.
Pro tip for all of the USA Cycling: get to know your local upgrade official. They're great guys. They work hard, and they're going to know if you're ready to upgrade. We'd like to thank everybody for listening.
Cat 3 Superstar.
Thanks for listening, tuning in, tweeting, everything about us. Thanks, of course, to BK1 of Rhymesayers Entertainment for his track Tema Du Cannibal off the album Radio Du Cannibal. It's our theme music. And once again, always wave at all of your fellow spandex-wearing clown suit riders, even if their bibs are on the outside of their shirts or their helmets are backwards. And for us, we'll catch you again next week. And until next time, don't be that guy.
Don't run into me.
That was that guy.
The Slow Ride Podcast. Bikes, advice, and rumors straight from the source. TheSlowRidePodcast.com and on Twitter at TheSlowRidePod.
But how drunk were you, little guy? You never said that.
I wasn't drunk.